right, so the conversation is still on Travel Max in the modern society. Thank goodness you're able to hear from other people your thoughts on Travel Max and if we should still continue to have such in the society at the moment. But we've been having that conversation and giving you facts and myths on Travel Max, and we've concluded that we don't really want to say something about civilization because we believe that we are the originators of civilization, that is Africa as a whole. But we'll not be having this conversation alone. We already have our guest live with us in the studio. His name is Kolade Adenle. He is a cultural blogger. Good morning. How are you doing?
Yeah, good morning.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah.
All right, so we started this conversation by stating some facts that we saw, and then we wanted to debunk some myths on Travel Max and all of that. So we believe that Africans have different sorts of Travel Max, but let's start with, where did it originate from?
I think the advent of Travel Max can be traced to virtually all cultures, not just Africans, because they have, the Scandinavians, we have the Mongolians, we have some ancient Chinese people who actually have these marks, and some parts of India, Red Indians, and the likes, they have tattoos. Now coming to Africa, if we check, history, Egypt, for instance, they have so many signs and symbols, and they are very deep on spirituality. And, they have marks to show these things, and, they try as much as possible to put it on themselves. And it can be traced to some of the mummies, like the mummified dead people in ancient Egypt. You can see traces of them having tribal marks and tattoos, and so I think we can trace it to virtually almost all cultures. I think the only culture that negates the use of tribal marks is the Jewish culture, because you can see a part of the Bible, I think Leviticus 28 or something, where there was a curse placed on people who actually put marks on themselves and get tattoos on themselves. So it can be traced back to almost all cultures. That's what I have here.
Interesting. So let's look at significance, because one of the things we went back and forth on to show this morning earlier on was, if, for instance, talking about the African culture now, if it was for beautification, we knew that there's some that was for medication purposes, some was for identification, some was for beautification. But there was this back and forth on if it started when the slave era or the slavery period, if it started then or if it started before that time. Because there was this idea that it was because people knew that people were being enslaved, so they needed to mark and identify and all of that.
Yeah, that's true. Having tribal marks is a way of, identifying people. And apart from that, it's some certain cultures, especially Yoruba culture, it is used to determine if a child is truly from a particular family. There are some incisions that are made on the child's body, although the outcome sometimes may be fatal, because sometimes the child, if the child is not from that family, the child either dies or fall sick. It is just to identify and to determine the DNA exactly of children back then.
All right, so, you talked about tribal marks originating from different parts of the world. What are the types that we have? I mean, we know that Yoruba people have Gombo, Bamu, and all of those other ones, but what are the types of tribal marks that we have that exist?
Exists?
Yeah.
In the Yoruba culture, let me start from, because, I'm a Yoruba boy.
Okay.
Yeah, the Yoruba culture, we have Wele, Okeke, we have Gombo. I think Gombo is from Ogbomoso.
Yeah.
We have some part of the Fulani culture also have the Bororos. They have, some kind of marks they put here. And the Fulanis actually have a lot of tattoos they place majorly on the female just for beautification. Some part of the Igbo culture too. And, I think it just has to do specifically with, the different reasons and why cultures have it. So the Christians, there's a book I read. I said there was a time that, Christians that travel for evangelism and come back were given the crucifix tattoo just to show how important and how basically how important their efforts, effort in evangelizing the gospel of Christ is. And so I think some part of the Arab cultures, they have henna or something that, they put on the female body, especially when they're getting married. And I think it's just determined by the culture and reasons for having them.
Okay, let's look at modern society and how, it is sort of out of vogue, or should we say unacceptable, to mark a child or give a child tribal mark. Let's look at modern society. Wouldn't it be an erasure or an elimination of cultural nuances and context to say, okay, it is barbaric to put tribal marks on children, knowing that there is a long history behind, tribal marks? Yeah. Yes.
I think the only way we can say that is if we check the reasons for having them. The major reason why people were tattooed, especially on the face, back then was just basically for identification purpose. There were a lot of, for instance, someone like me now, I can easily pass for an Hausa boy. Like if you see me outside, you feel but my family house is at Ibono, Shogbo. I'm a proper Yoruba boy. And back then, there was nothing like an ID card, there was nothing like birth certificate, there were nothing like, having to document where this person is from. So I think right now that we have these things, we have fingerprints, we have, so many ways, photographs, we have so many ways of identifying people. I think it will be unreasonable to put a mark on someone now just for identification purpose, But for some other reasons, although it might seem weird, but for some other reasons, there are some marks that are actually very important to have, especially in the Yoruba culture. There's something they call Igbere.
Igbere, yes.
Yeah, Igbere is an incision or tribal marks basically meant for protection against maybe gunshots or blade and things like that. So if someone who is from a African traditional religious belief system puts a mark on his or her child for protection, I see nothing bad in it.
Okay. So what case, because, we can still say, okay, we understand the context of Bere because of the spiritual interpretation and meanings that it has. Yeah. But what case should we make for people who, in the era when they were born or depending on the circumstances around them, they were tattooed, they were given tribal marks. And now they're older, they're in a modern society that thinks this is so out of vogue, they feel out of place. What case should be made for them? Because, it's easy for three of us to sit here and have this conversation because we don't have marks.
We don't have marks,
But the truth is, not everyone that has the mark now were given by their parents. My mom, for instance, she told me a story that when she was in the secondary school, but out of peer pressure, she was practically the only one in her class without marks. So she saved up money took the money to the honey callers to. She followed. She went there with one of her younger sisters. So when they got there, and she was the first person to be marked. She has 2 small marks here, and her younger sister saw what was going on. That was when the younger sister said she was not interested anymore. So it's not everyone that has the mark that were given by their parents. Some people actually really like it. There was a time that it was like the dreadlocks of it was
Oh, okay.
So people actually really wanted it because you have to attain a certain level of affluence to be able to afford getting marked at that time. And it was not cheap. There's another Yoruba that says Olowo lo nkola.
Oh,
Interesting.
You get it's not something that someone who is struggling can just wake up and say I want to go and get marked. The royalty at that time where there was a particular style of marks that they had for them. So it was something that was just for the wealthy and the rich people. So people actually really wanted it just to feel among them. But now that we have so many Africans that are dropping the African belief system and embracing especially the Jewish system of belief, is Judaism, that outrightly negates it.
Yeah.
And a part of the Islam too, like the Islamic faith, some parts of the really deep ones really also don't go well with it. So I think it's just a conflict of beliefs and a conflict of, maybe I would say, the interest of maybe the colonial masters, and it's just a whole lot. But someone that has it now should not really feel bad about it. Someone that has it should try as much as possible to now educate young parents on reasons why it is, because so many people could have died from bleeding.
Yeah,
Infections and so many things that could have gone wrong. So let's say someone now is now in their right senses, like he's an adult and wants it, that's beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, we're having that conversation that I do not subscribe to you actually scarring a child. I am not a fan of that, especially if this child is not, cannot speak or pick for himself. I would rather you're an adult where you can say that, okay, so I want to be tattooed or I want a tribal mark. However, according to what I've read, tribal marks were given to children, and they were given to children as early as 3-6 months before they are 1 year old. That's because their skin is very supple and very fresh, so it would stay. And then, of course, by the time they are adults, it will heal fast. And then by the time they're adults, they won't feel the pain anymore. So the Child Act for 2003 has stated that it is illegal to do that to children. But then wouldn't it mean that somehow, since it is passed into the law, we are stylishly erasing our culture? Because now if you want to, tribal marks is a part of our traditional rights. It's a cultural belief system. But we cannot have it anymore because it is against the law. Yeah. So how does that come into play, really?
Well, if you want to look at the loopholes of the law, Bolade.
Let's even start. Let's even not pick up the loopholes. Okay. Let's even pick on the surface, the peripheral level.
I've always believed that there's no perfectly good culture and there's no perfectly bad culture. What you do is you strike a balance. You look at the bad things in your culture, the things that are not really, we are in a generation where people are talking about artificial intelligence. People are talking about, robotics and deep things. And you are still focused on getting marked because you want to identify somebody. It doesn't... Back then, it was, the civilization they had and they worked with. But we have civilizations now that can identify you even without you looking. You have CCTV cameras. Do you get what I'm saying? So there's no need for that anymore. Just look at the culture, look at the things that that are out of, yeah, you cannot put them in the museums. Put photographs in the museums. And, you know, really.
No, I did mention something, but please go ahead. We'll share.
Yeah. Put them in the museums for generations coming to, you know, see where their ancestors came from.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
I was saying that we should have an Institute of Tribal Marks.
Yeah,
Remember?
that was what you were saying earlier. And all that. But quick one. So, you know, we mentioned incisions, and that is bere for Yoruba people, and the fact that they have spiritual backings and all of that. But let's start breaking them down. So I was explaining to Yemisi that according to what I know, that when you get like a mark here, it is, according to what I know, it is a teething mark. For children, when they're growing up, they give them that particular teething mark so that you don't experience the amount of pain that you experience while you're growing teeth. But then you said something about markings for gunshots and blades and all of that. So where do they get those ones?
It might be your perception about what you said now, might be just someone's perception about what it is.
True.
The incision they put here is afoshe.
Because you know I was saying it that I'm not very sure.
But I know that they also put on.
But they put on children.
Yeah, well, your spirituality back there, your spirituality has to be, you know, from you have families where, you know, their dad is the Oluwawo.
Okay.
Do you understand?
Okay.
I, for instance, I'm from the Oluwawo's family. Do you understand? So if my parents were deeply into the African traditional belief system, you know, I might probably have those kind of things. You know, it might also be for that. But what I know that is for afoshe. You cannot just see it on just anybody. It has to be so. If it might seem as if it's normal, but if you check the background of the person and ask questions, you will know that it's not just there chilling.
Okay, I have heard of the ones that they do incisions in the middle of the head, or just in the forehead, or on the chest and the back.
Your
then
leg.
The one that actually blew me away is the one under the foot. And but I was say something about it making you light-footed. If there's
Checking your yeah.
Do you happen to know anything about that?
I think that one is for there's, you know, Yoruba traditional belief system has a very deep connection with nature.
Yeah.
And, you know, they believe that when you are going out, it is your head that is the most important, but then it is your foot or your leg that takes you there. Do you get? So it is just, you know, marking the leg not to probably go astray.
Oh, so you were right.
Hey, give me my accolade.
You were right.
I know what
No,
I'm
we trained you. No, not just to go astray, and, you know, just to go the right path. Yeah, you know. So I think it's until we try as much as possible to have this kind of conversations that we will really, really know these things. And, you know, we just have to keep pushing and keep trying to know and keep doing everything possible at our own disposal to, you know, try to understand the reasons why these things are. Because at the end of the day, we are all still Yorubas.
Yeah. Wait, does it also mean ofe? You know, where you talk to the ground and then you disappear? No? We can't do that. Okay. I'm just checking.
That has another, you know, process.
Transport system.
Because I mean, you know, when we see movies or we watch plays and all of that, you'd see.
No, disappearing is not all cultures. It's not just in Africa. There was appearance and disappearance in the Bible.
Yes.
Do you get it goes way into all cultures.
Yeah.
You know, so it's just understanding nature and knowing how best to, you know, work things out. I feel it's physics, you know. It's just
Give or take, yes.
Because, I mean, when he said I feel it's physics, I mean, it reminded me of a conversation I had with a friend of mine who had spoken to Babayemi Elebuibo
Okay.
and was explaining that if you look deeply at the Odufa, that there's
pure
physics in there, there's math in there.
Odufa is binary system.
Yeah, it actually
It's just pure mathematics. I think that's one of the issues we have in educational systems. That's why a lot of us are, finding it very difficult to understand mathematics. Because we have a system that, it's just there for you to grasp, but then we are bringing another
type of math.
Do you understand? We are bringing mathematics from the Arabs, until we sit down and understand what we have. I mean, really.
Let's tie this up with how people feel stigmatized, especially those that have marks. Let's tie it up here. What would you say to someone who, because I mean, what's the name of this Adetutu, yeah?
Yes.
The model
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's just one example.
That's a plus for her.
It is a
She's
plus
a model.
for her. But I'm saying that, in fact, I feel like her appearance in that campaign kind of made it look like, oh, really? Oh, okay. So, it was like an awakening of some sort.
Yeah.
There are some people that have their tribal marks, they don't really care because, I mean, it doesn't disturb anything. They do what they need to do. They make their money. They live their lives.
Yeah.
But there are some people who probably, because growing up was not very sweet
for
because
them.
of the
They're probably
bullying
bullied,
and laughing and poking fun and all of that. So what would you say about the stigmatization that comes? Because if we are saying that we're making a case for, there are other better means of identification now, but what now happens to those who have been marked?
I think it's just understanding that regardless of whatever you have, people will talk.
Okay.
Regardless. People will body shame you for being too thin, for being too fat, for being too tough, for being...
Yes.
So just understand that that's human nature. And I have this philosophy about life. What you give is what you take. If you body shame me for this, I'll body shame you too. Just look for something.
He just did it. You got
Do you understand? If someone body shames you for having tribal marks, just look for, there will be definitely something you can say to the person.
But I mean, that is violence.
This is encouraging
violence, Kolade.
It seems like, but at the end of the day, it is what it is, And, I would try to, would I say pacify?
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry that I had to interrupt you. Do you know what this reminds me of? You know this thing when you're in primary school, and then if you attended a proper Yoruba primary school where you're having a conversation with somebody and then, this person comes and wants to insult you and then the person says, oh, Sheti B. Like,
exactly.
And then immediately you attack back and say, oh, Sheti B.
Yeah.
My goodness. Please go.
So I think that's one of the things that people like that can, embrace. When someone bullies you and you bully the person back, it will reduce. But if you keep taking bullying, if someone bullies you and it will get to a point where you be pushed to, do things that you're not supposed to do.
Quick disclaimer. We're not encouraging bullying.
Your ways are very interesting, Kolade.
We're not encouraging bullying. However, I think I understand Kolade's point about how people can be mean. But when they are mean, this is how I would like
match energies. That's
Kolade is saying match energies, but I am going to tie it up with if people are being mean to you, don't forget that it is a reflection of who they are, not who you are.
It has nothing
to do with you.
Really. You show them who they are. No, for real.
I'm done with Kolade.
Okay, so the thing is, as much as we are laughing about this, a lot of people are actually going through bullying as children, even as adults, even as
with or without tribal marks.
Without tribal marks.
And I think being living in a communal kind of system when you see someone bullying another person, maybe because of the mark, speak up for the person, you know,
Yeah.
defend the person, and you know, just let the
Bully.
bully know that you are doing something wrong. No, don't laugh. 'Cause
Yeah, actually.
When I was in secondary school, I went to St. Patrick's College in Ibadan. So one of my classmates. I went to
That's
Sparkle.
why.
You know, no, it
That's
was
why
like
it's matching
I'm
energies.
telling you, like, I was trying to. I am an Ibadan girl, so I kind of
There's-
knew that there was an origin.
no,
Go on.
there was one of my friends, my classmates. His name was Musiliu. He had like serious marks on his face, and that was the only reason why people like pick on him. And he was very good at maths, and I was bad at maths, so he was always the one, you know, pushing me through. And I had very sharp mouth. So when someone steps up to him, I, you know, take it up on myself to, you know, defend him and, you know.
Yeah, because that's your master. So.
Do you get? So I think we have a responsibility for ourselves. You know, when you see someone getting bullied for that reason or for whatever
Any
reason,
reason.
yeah, you know, speak up and, you know, defend people, and, you know, just give people a sense of belonging and just build their confidence. When you see someone speak up for you, it's a confidence booster. You know that someone actually really cares about you, and, you know, not everybody sees you by your. Because if someone says that, well, like, when you are going out, you assume that's what everybody is noticing.
Thinking.
Do you get? But if you have someone that speaks up, you know that person is just being a fool or something.
Oh, I like how profound this is. I mean, we are all responsible for how the society turns out, because evil thrives when good men do not speak
Exactly.
up or do
Yes.
not stand against evil. And for the most part, most of the bullying that has happened, because as Colin was talking right now, it took me back to secondary school days. There was one person who kept on bullying me, and people would be laughing, and that kind of had a huge impact.
I think bullying is not really serious until someone else supports.
Yeah.
It does not. When someone says something,
No, I think I get what he's saying.
Well, that is.
Someone,
if it is
it's
verbal.
magnified. That's what he means
Yeah,
now.
but that is if it is verbal. If it was physical, I mean, if you're being bullied physically, if people are there or not there, it is
It's-
big.
yes,
because
actually.
I mean, if you keep shoving my head in a toilet, or you keep pushing me in a locker, if you keep beating me up day in, day out, or keep locking me up and all of that, and nobody is there, it doesn't matter. I'm still
Yeah.
getting bullied. So I think that bullying, as big or as small, other people are there or not. I mean, for the Tribal Max conversation, of course, people would have to be there to laugh and point fingers and, you know, make it.
jokes
And this is what is even very annoying. It goes on to name callings.
Yes.
yeah,
Because
they call you Awala.
Awala.
You fight lion, things like that.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I mean, now we can talk about it, but for children that have gone through all of that and they just keep hiding,
It's not funny.
it affects them as
Psyche.
adults.
Yeah,
everything,
emotionally, you know, their confidence gets reduced, and you
Yeah.
know, I think it's just you can seek therapy too. You know, read books on, you know, on building your confidence and building your self-worth. I think those things will help, and you know, just understanding that humans will be humans.
Thank you so much, Kolade Adeni,
you
for
for
joining us
having
this
me.
morning on this conversation about tribal marks in modern society. But if there's anything to take away from this conversation today, it is the fact that bullying people for whatever it is, the way they look, the way they speak, the way they dress, is actually a no-no. And if you're there when someone is being bullied, stand up, because we all have things that we can be bullied for, really.
From an healthcare point of view, I think the process that we actually get to do that is much more important. You know, culturally, you might try to equate it with drawing tattoos. If you go to places like South America, they really place much value on drawing tattoos. But how you get to do it, the blades that you use, are they not infected? There's some that predispose the child to blood to diseases like hepatitis B, possibly HIV. So the risk in it actually outweighs any benefits that comes with it. So from an healthcare point of view, I wouldn't really support it.
tribal mark really does, in my own opinion, doesn't have the. It shouldn't still be allowed in the modern day society. It's more or less child abuse, because you're basically doing it without the child's consent, and there is no medical proof to back that up on the claims to which they use to scar the child. So basically it shouldn't be allowed in modern society.
Tribal mark, it depends on the culture. I think the whole essence of tribal mark is a cultural, I can say it's a cultural behavior, and it's a cultural instinct. So what I mean by cultural instinct, that it all depends on the belief of a tribe. Maybe be it Yoruba, be it Hausa, because we have some Hausa people that also do tribal marks on their face, and we have some Yoruba people like the Oyo people that do the same thing. But to my own belief, I think tribal mark is an archaic idea, because there's nobody in this modern day that wants his or her child to have tribal mark on his or her face, because it's the face. It defaces people's face, and it doesn't make people look good.
My take on tribal marks in recent times, I think like every cultural practice, I think it's something that should be evaluated actually, if it's still relevant to today's time. It had its advantages, or what was supposed to be its advantages then, as per being able to identify where this person is from the mark on their face. It had a reason that I believe that it must have had the need to do in the days of our forefathers. But in these current times, I mean, you don't need to identify anybody by putting a mark on their face to be able to tell that this person is from this region or that region. And I think we should also look at the health implications. I mean, people could get infected from such practice, and such practice are also aiding all other practices like female genital mutilation too. So I think they are all in the same group of cultural practices that are a bit harmful these days. It's something that should be evaluated. It's something that I feel if people do no longer want it, then let's just stop it. So we need to reassess the need for the tribal marks, and if the risk is outweighing the benefit, I think it should be stopped actually.
I think that nowadays we don't see as many people getting tribal marks as before. I'm not sure if it's just my own bias. But the people who still get it usually would be people who are in areas like rural areas, or areas that are not very, well educated about health and things like that. And oftentimes it will probably pose a risk factor for, like, say, infections in certain instances. Although, they put it through fire and all of that, so the child might be prevented from having it. But at the end of the day, it's still unnecessary, I believe. And if it can be avoided, by all means, it should be.
I'm Dr. Oguntoyinbo Kehinde. So, concerning the roles of tribal mark in modern day medicine, what I don't think it is necessary, because why do you put tribal mark in the first instance? I think it's just for identification and to actually know where this one belongs. But then, as the person you put this mark on grows older, usually they don't like it, or he or she doesn't like it. And another thing is, to me, it is disfiguring. So why do you now have to put tribal mark? It is not necessary. Please, I want to dissuade the public from putting tribal mark on the children. And apart from that, even now there could be infection, bleeding, and the rest. Some children, they come with bleeding problem. It's difficult for them. They have clotting problem, So by the time you now put it, it's actually difficult for blood to clot, and a lot of things, could also go wrong. Then this advent of all forms of infection, hepatitis B, even HIV and the rest. So why do you not want to put mark? Because you are going to use sharp objects. So to me, it is not necessary.